A mountain. Not a mountain of ice and snow, but of rocks and stones. It is night. The stars shine down out of the darkness. There is a man sleeping at the top of this mountain. The wind ruffles his clothes. His name is Arjuna. The blaze of light which brought him here has long since faded away. But now we hear footsteps. 5 others are climbing up the mountain towards him. 4 of them are his brothers, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadeva. The 5th is Draupadi, the princess born out of a sacred fire, who is companion to them all. Now they stumble up to the top of that mountain. They see Arjuna, they run to him. They have not seen him in 5 years. Sahadeva feels for a pulse. He's only sleeping. Nakula lays a blanket over him, and now they sit around him in a circle. The sky is lightening. Already the darkness going, the stars winking out. The sky is becoming blue. And then far off, a mountaintop covered in ice and snow is lit by golden fire. That light creeps down from the top. And then another mountain turns the color of fire again, and another. There are hundreds of mountains around them. And then all at once the sun slips over the rim of the world, and it is day. I'm Jay Leeming, and this is the Crane Bag Podcast. I'm Jay Leeming, and this is the Mythic Landscape Radio Hour on WRFI Community Radio, Watkins Glen, Ithaca. We are exploring the great epic of India, the Mahabharata. And in this story, 5 brothers have been cheated out of their kingdom in a dice game and are condemned to be in exile, to live in exile in the wilderness for 13 years. During that time, Arjuna, the warrior amongst them, went into the mountains seeking sacred weapons. Shiva appeared to him, and then Indra, the king of the gods. He's been gone 5 years, and now he has returned to earth. Counseled by the sage Markandeya, his brothers and Draupadi have known just where to find him after 5 years. Now they come to the top of this mountain. Now they sit around him. Now he blinks and opens his eyes. "Welcome home, my brother," said Yudhishthira. "Welcome home." "Ah, my brothers," said Arjuna. "Ah, my dear Draupadi, so good to see you again." And he embraced each of them in turn. And then Bhima said, "Where have you been, my brother? What have you seen?" And Arjuna got a faraway look in his eyes, and he said, "I have been in a place of great light. I have been in Indra's world. Golden palaces were there. The gods moved among them like great pieces of music, each one of them a song, a great symphony. I sat beside Indra. I saw his hands, how they were charred black from the thunderbolts he had hurled, demons. He taught me many things, too many to describe. And then I was returned here, to this world of earth and air and water and fire." "It is good to have you back," said Yudhishthira. "Now let's get down from the top of this mountain, for mountains are dangerous." So they climbed down, and they took shelter in that cave, and there they slept that night. But in the middle of the night, Bhima was awoken by a sound. He opened his eyes. He saw there was a fire someone had lit at the entrance of the cave, and someone was pacing around that fire. So he got up and he went to the fire. It was Arjuna. "My brother," said Bhima, "what's the trouble? Can't you sleep?" And Arjuna said, "No, I cannot sleep." "Bhima, Many miraculous things happened to me in Indra's world, but there were difficult things also. Tell me about the difficult things, said Bhima. Well, one day, there, in a garden in Indra's world, I found Urvasi, a great and beautiful goddess. And she looked at me with laughter in her heart and joy in her eyes, and she said, Arjuna, come, let us take a walk in the garden. Let us walk beside the flowing stream and share a song together, that ancient and beautiful song of man and woman, of moon and sun. Let us sing together, my dear. And I looked at her, but her beauty was so great, so immense, so spectacular, and the power just shimmering off her so intense. I could only see her as the great mother of all things, as the goddess herself. And I bowed my head down, and I said, I worship you, dear one, I worship you. No, I cannot go walk with you in the way that you seem to seek. And she looked at me, and she snarled. And her words of love shriveled up, and she said, Arjuna, I curse you. I have turned away gods here. I offer to walk with you, to sing with you, and you turn me away. I curse you. You shall lose all your powers, all your strength. Yes, you shall be weak. You shall be a woman. Yes, for an entire year you will know what it is to be a woman. Goodbye, you great warrior. And she turned and went snarling off. So, Bhima, I have been cursed by the goddess Urvasi herself. And we are destined to fight a great battle. I can feel it. So what use will I be? Perhaps all my powers will leave me right when I need them the most. It is true, said Bhima. This is discouraging. I do not know what to say. But let me tell you this. In the forest one day I met Hanuman, the monkey god, and he gave us many gifts. So Bhima told Arjuna the story, of how he had met Hanuman, the monkey god, in the forest, and how Hanuman had offered to give his roar to the conch shell of Arjuna, and to give his shape to the flag of Arjuna, so that when Arjuna went into battle, his enemies would be frightened in their hearts by the sound of that conch shell and the sight of that flag. So, said Bhima, Hanuman is helping us. Do not despair. Morning is wiser than the evening, and you know, a goddess's curse, well, yes, that can take your strength away, but lack of sleep can do the same. So, let us sleep. So they both went into the cave, lay down, and slept. And far away in the kingdom of the Kurus, everyone was sleeping as well. And Karna himself was sleeping, and in his sleep there came a dream. And in this dream, the sun god, Surya, came to him, Karna's father. And he said, Karna, my son, I have come to warn you. I have come to warn you, for I know you have taken a vow of generosity, and this is a beautiful thing, yes. But Indra, the king of the gods, has heard of it, and he wishes to test you. Soon he will arrive in the form of a beggar, and he will ask for a gift from you. You will grant him whatever he desires, and he will ask for the golden breastplate upon your chest. My son, you must not give him this breastplate. As long as you have this breastplate, this golden breastplate which you were born with, as long as you have this, you cannot be killed. But if you surrender it to Indra, the king of the gods, then you will be vulnerable. You know Arjuna wishes to kill you in the great battle that is sure to come. My son, on this one occasion, do not be generous. Do not give up your golden breastplate to Indra, the king of the gods. And Karna said, Father, thank you for coming to me. But if Indra should come to me in the shape of a beggar, I will give him whatever he asks. I have taken this vow of generosity. It is a part of who I am. I will humble Indra with my generosity. "Oh, my son," the sun god said, "if you do this, you will die. Your mortal life will end." And Karna said, "Father, yes, my body will be destroyed, but I will have maintained my vow. Who I am will live on. Who I am will not be destroyed, though my body shall be killed. Father, I will keep my vow, even if it means my death." And then the dream faded, and Karna awoke. It was dawn. The sun was shining through a window into his room. He went to that window and looked out, and there was the sun, giving its golden light to the world, generously giving of itself to the trees and the leaves of the trees, and to the great river Ganges, and to the birds. Well, back on the side of that mountain, the Pandavas and Draupadi awoke, and they began to climb down that mountain. They traveled for many days. Once again, they crossed that mountain of silence. Once again, they traveled across the foothills. And then at last they came to the forest. And they journeyed into parts of that forest where they had never been before. They saw strange red mushrooms, heard the chanting of monkeys in the trees, found purple rocks beside glowing crystalline creeks. They saw a golden centipede. They saw a tortoise with a green and black shell, meandering beside a stream. Well, one day when they were in that forest, Draupadi went for a walk herself, away from the others. And she came to a Jambul tree, a beautiful tree. And on the branch of this tree there was a resplendent, lovely purple fruit. Now the Jambul tree is known for its sweetness. She saw this fruit with its smooth skin. Already she could taste its purple sweetness in her mouth. Without thinking about it, purely by instinct, she reached out and she plucked that fruit from the branch. She held it close to her breast and turned from the tree. But as she did so, a voice sounded behind her. "Lady, what have you done? Lady, do you not see?" She turned. There was no one there. It was the tree speaking. "Lady, what have you done? For 12 years, that holy man there in the distance, in his hut beneath my branches, for 12 years he has lived here, abstaining from all food, keeping this world alive through his spells and his mantras, which he has chanted daily. And on this day, he was to come to this branch and eat this fruit from my branch. But now you have plucked it. Already its flavor is fading. He will awake and he will curse you. And you know the curse of a Brahmin can shrivel your life." Why should I be cursed so?" said Draupadi. I didn't know. I didn't see." "That is why," said the tree. And fearful and confused, Draupadi went back through the forest to her husband's. Arjuna was the first to see her. He saw the trouble in her face. "What is wrong, my dear? What is wrong?" And she told them the story about the fruit she had seen and plucked from that branch. "Can any of you," she said, "think of a way? If only I could put this fruit back somehow." They considered this. Among them they had magic and power. Arjuna himself had a weapon which could destroy the entire world. But none of their powers could succeed in putting that fruit back on its branch. "Let us go to the tree," said Yudhishthira, "and see what can be done." So she led them through the forest back to the Jambul tree. She showed them the place where she had plucked it from the branch. She showed them the hut of the holy man in the distance. And the tree spoke and said, Draupadi, if you were pure, if you had remained faithful to your husbands, then by the power of your truth you would have been able to return this fruit to my branch. But you have not been pure. You have not been faithful. Yes, I have, she said. I have not betrayed my husbands, not in any way. Not with your body, the tree said, but in your thoughts, in your heart, you have loved another. Speak this truth into the air, and by the power of that truth, you will be granted permission to return this fruit to my branch. Draupadi began to weep. They all looked at her. Karna, it's true. I've loved Karna from the start, but he was the son of a driver. How could I be together with him? Beautiful, strong, sad Karna. Once, perhaps, we could have been together. But now... And now you may return the fruit to my branch, said the tree. Weeping, Draupadi lifted the smooth purple fruit up to the branch. Magically, the stem regrew to the branch, fastened itself there, and she let go of the fruit, and it hung suspended from the branch. They all stared at it, amazed. And then she burst into tears and ran off into the forest. The others looked at the ground. They were sad. They were angry. Had they failed her in some way? And then one by one they left. Yudhishthira, Nakula, Sahadeva, Arjuna as well. Back into the forest, each by a separate way, lost in thought, angry and sad, confused. Finally, only Bhima was left. He turned to go, but he heard a sound behind him, a sound from the hut of the holy man, a footstep. Bhima hid behind a bush, and out of the hut came a thin but radiant man. He bowed to each of the sacred directions. He breathed in, he breathed out. And then he walked to that fruit hanging from that branch. He reached out and plucked that sweet purple fruit from the branch. For a moment he held it to his cheek, his eyes closed in deep satisfaction. And in that moment, Bhima turned and went off into the forest. Well, they all didn't speak much that day, or that night. And the next morning they awoke and shared a meal together, but they were each silent and withdrawn. And then Yudhishthira said, Let us go south to Lake Dwaitavana. For once we were happy there. So they went through the forest, past great ancient trees. So they went over hills and through valleys, all the while going south. And they came to a great crashing waterfall. And there was a trail that went beneath it. And Yudhishthira said, Let us go beneath these waters. But, said Nakula, if we do that, we will become wet. Exactly, said Yudhishthira. So each of them walked beneath those waters, and each of them wept, and their tears became a part of the river as they trembled down and flowed away. And finally they came to the beautiful lake known as Dwaitavana. And they lay down tired beside that lake, and they slept. And in the night, each of them had a dream. Each of the Pandavas had a dream, and they dreamed of Draupadi. And they dreamed of her as a girl, and as a mother, and as a great goddess of love and beauty. And there was gold and light around her, and music flowing from her shape. And in their dreams they looked deep into her eyes. And then they awoke. Arjuna was up first. He went off into the forest, and he killed a pheasant, and he brought it back to where they were camped. Bhima went out as well. He found a blue flower, and he plucked it and brought it back to the side of the lake. Nakula and Sahadeva, they found some dry grasses nearby, and they wove them into a mat on which a person could sit. And they all came to Draupadi, and they gave her these gifts. Arjuna roasted the pheasant for all of them to eat. Bhima gave her the flower. "This is for you," he said. And Nakula and Sahadeva gave her the mat so she could sit on that mat on the cold ground. And Yudhishthira told her a story about the love of Rama and Sita, and the story sparkled in the air like distant stars. Well, they stayed by that lake for some time. And then one day, Krishna came walking out of the forest. Krishna, their advisor and friend. And he sat down with all of them, and they shared their stories. And then Krishna said, "I come bringing difficult news. Karna, your enemy, has obtained a fearsome weapon. He has obtained a thunderbolt given to him by Indra himself, a thunderbolt in the form of a spear that will never miss and will destroy any target it strikes." "How did this happen?" said Arjuna. "It happened like this. Karna swore a vow of generosity, and the gods heard of this and were humbled by it. Indra in particular wished to test him. So he came down to earth in the form of a beggar, and one day in the street outside the palace of Hastinapura, he greeted Karna and asked him for a gift. And Karna said, "I will give you whatever you ask for." And the beggar bent down and said, "I ask for your golden breastplate." Now this breastplate, Karna was born with it, but he keeps it hidden under his clothes, so few people know it is there. And what's more, Karna had been warned by his father Surya, the sun god, that Indra would come to him in the form of a beggar. So Karna looked at this beggar, and he saw Indra in his eyes, and he said, "Indra, I see you there, Indra in the shape of a beggar. I will give you what you ask for. But this golden breastplate is vital to me. It is a part of myself. It keeps me invulnerable to all attacks of every kind. So you must give me something of yourself as well." And Indra, in the shape of a beggar, said, "I will give you one of my thunderbolts, a thunderbolt in the form of a spear that will never miss and will strike a target and destroy it completely. That is, if you are going to maintain your vow. Perhaps you wish to go back on your word and to break your vow of generosity." Karna looked him in the eyes. "I will not break my vow," he said. And he took hold of that golden breastplate and he ripped it from his body and handed it to Indra, dripping with blood. And splotches of blood appeared on Karna's chest. He was in terrible pain. Indra was impressed. And suddenly there was a flash of light and a clap of thunder, and there was a spear in his hands, in Indra's hands, still smoking with its power. And he handed it to Karna. "This is for you. You can only use it once, and then it will return to me. But it will not fail to strike its target and to destroy it completely." Karna took the thunderbolt from Indra. Indra took the golden breastplate, and he disappeared. "So that is how this has happened," said Krishna. "Is there any defense against this weapon?" said Arjuna. "There is none," said Krishna. But then he looked at Yudhishthira. "But rest assured, if it comes to a war, the victory of your side is guaranteed." "Victory, yes," said Yudhishthira, "but at what cost?" "You must be prepared to sacrifice everything. Everything, said Yudhishthira. Then what kind of victory can this be? Yudhishthira, if your race is destroyed, if the earth is completely laid waste, but Dharma is preserved, that will be a victory. Not for those who die, said Yudhishthira, not for those who suffer. Still, said Krishna, this is a decision you might have to make. Look at the lake, he said. Look at the beautiful waters there in the sun. Look at the swans out on that lake, their beautiful white feathers. Still, the beak of a swan can wrench a finger out of a man's hand. It is time for me to go. Learn from your time in the forest, and I will see you again. And he turned and walked away into the forest. Yudhishthira and Arjuna sat there for a while, and then they looked out at the beautiful lake and at the swans. Well, they stayed beside that lake for some time. And then one day, out of the forest, there came walking a man, and it was Krishna. Krishna, they all said, and Yudhishthira greeted him. Krishna, so good to see you. Yes, he said, good to see all of you as well. And they all embraced and sat down, and then they shared their stories. And they all told him about their adventures in the forest. And Krishna told him what he had been up to, and then he said, I bring you news. Karna has obtained a fearsome weapon. He has obtained the spear of Indra, the king of the gods himself. How did he obtain such a weapon? Said Arjuna. Some time ago, Karna swore a vow of generosity, Krishna said. He vowed to give everything he could to anyone who asked. He has fulfilled this vow. And one day Indra came to him in the shape of a beggar and asked for the golden breastplate on Karna's chest. He was born with this breastplate. It makes him invulnerable to all kinds of weapons. And Karna had been warned of this by his father, the sun god. So he looked at that beggar and he saw Indra in that beggar's eyes. And he said, I see you, Indra. I know you for who you are. I will give you my golden breastplate, but it is a part of me. You must give me something as well. And Indra said, I will give you my thunderbolt, my shattering spear. But it is a part of myself. I cannot surrender it forever. I will give it to you, and you will only get to use it on one occasion. But when you launch this weapon, it will utterly destroy whatever target you hurl it at. That is my gift to you. Karna agreed to this, and he took hold of that golden breastplate and ripped it from his body. Splotches of blood covered his chest. It had been a part of him since he was born. And he handed it to Indra. Indra was amazed. He was humbled. A human had not broken his word. A human had kept his word, even at such great cost and such pain to himself. And Indra gave him his thunderbolt. So Karna now possesses this weapon, Krishna said. And he has in mind one target only, and that is you, Arjuna. Is there any defense against this weapon? Said Arjuna. There is none. But rest assured, your victory in a war, if it should come to that, is assured. Yes, our victory, said Yudhishthira, but at what cost? You must be prepared to sacrifice everything. If everything is destroyed, said Yudhishthira, what victory can this be? If Dharma is preserved, if the way of the world is preserved, said Krishna, that is the victory. Not for those who die, said Yudhishthira, not for those who suffer. Yudhishthira, you may have to choose between the preservation of your race and the preservation of Dharma. That is no choice at all, said Yudhishthira. But it may be what lies ahead, said Krishna. Look at the lake. Look at the swans upon it. How beautiful they are. Some say they were Brahmins in a past life. So beautiful, their white feathers there in the sun. But the beak of a swan can wrench a finger from a man's hand. It is time for me to leave you. And that very day, Krishna left them and walked away into the forest. And they remained, camped beside that beautiful, glittering lake. And often they would look out at its waters, and they would see the swans. Well, they lived beside that lake for a good long while. They spent years there, and they lived well. And then one night, Yudhishthira had a dream. And in this dream, he was walking through a forest. And he came to a meadow in that forest, and there was a deer there, in the long grass. And the deer spoke and said, Yudhishthira, you, your brothers, and Draupadi, you are oppressing us. For you have killed too many of us with your arrows, and roasted us and eaten us there beside the lake. You must leave. You must go somewhere else, or we will be decimated. There will be no deer left beside this beautiful lake. And Yudhishthira awoke, and he knew just what he had to do. He gathered his brothers and Draupadi together, and he said, we will go to the southwest, into the grasslands. We must leave here, for we are oppressing the deer whose home this is. So they all gathered their things together, and off they went towards the southwest. And soon the trees came fewer and fewer, only clumps of them here and there. And they entered some grasslands, long, whispering grasses, higher than their heads. The sun was hot above them, beating down. They walked sweating through these grasses. And as often happens when you're hiking with others, after a while they got strung out, so they were all in a line, not all of them clumped together, but some ahead and some behind. Bhima went first, lost in his own thoughts. And soon he came through the whispering, speaking grasses to a great pool of water. Oppressed by thirst, feeling it in his bones, he knelt down to drink from that water, but a voice spoke. Do not drink these waters. Answer my questions, and then you may drink. Bhima looked around. Who are you? Who are you who speaks here out of the grasses? Answer my questions, and then you will drink, said the voice. But Bhima was overpowered by thirst. Sweating, he reached down, cupped the water in his hands, and drank it down. As he did so, his breath stopped. The light left his eyes. He died and fell to the sand. Bam! Cold, a dead body beside the water. Well, soon after this, Arjuna came through the grasses to the pool. And he saw Bhima's body lying down there. Bhima, he said. He knelt down. He felt him. He was not breathing. He was dead as a stone. Bhima, he said, my brother, what has killed you? What has struck you down? And he pulled an arrow from his quiver, fitted it to his bow, and looked out into the grasses. Who are you who has struck down my brother? And a voice said, I have struck him down. He did not answer my questions. Who are you? Said Arjuna. Who are you? Answer my questions, and all shall be revealed, the voice said. But Arjuna was gripped by thirst, overpowering thirst. He put down his bow and his arrow. He bent down to those waters. He cupped them in his hands. He drank that water, and he died as well. His breath left him, and he fell next to Bhima, dead in the sand. Well, one by one they all came. Nakula and Sahadeva, they came as well. They too drank the water, and they died. Finally, Draupadi came as well. Weeping, she saw all of her husbands dead in the sand, but overpowered by thirst, she bent down, cupped the waters in her hands, drank those waters down, and she died as well. Finally came Yudhishthira. Through the grasses he came to that pool. He saw Draupadi and all his brothers dead in the sand. "What has happened?" he said. "What has happened?" They were all dead, but the voice said, "Answer my questions, and then all will be revealed." "Who are you?" said Yudhishthira. "Who are you? Answer my questions, and then you may drink the water." "Begin," said Yudhishthira. "What is faster than the wind?" Thought. "Who are more numerous, the living or the dead?" "The living," said Yudhishthira, "because the dead are no longer." "What came first, day or night?" "Day, but it was only a day ahead." "What does not move when it is born?" "An egg." "What is stronger, life or death?" "Life, because it contains and holds up so many miseries." "Give me an example of poison." "Desire." "Give me an example of failure." "Victory." "Who is your opposite?" "Myself." "What is another name for the future?" "The past." So the voice asked Yudhishthira one question after the other. Riddles tossed at him, and he pierced each one with the arrow of his wisdom. "Give me an example of wealth." "Contentment." "When is a living man no different from one who has died?" "When he gives nothing to others." "What is the most cunning animal?" "The one which no human has yet seen." "What, for each of us, is inevitable?" "Happiness." "And what is the greatest wonder in this world?" "Each day, men, women, and animals are dragged away to the kingdom of death. Yet still, those who remain, they live as if death will never find them." "Ah, Yudhishthira, you have done well. I am Dharma, your father. I am well pleased with you. Ask me for a gift, and I shall give it to you. I ask that my brother Nakula be given life once more." "It shall be done," said the voice. "But why did you choose this gift? You are a king. You need strength and power. Arjuna and Bhima can give you those things. You are a man. Love is sweet in this world. Yet you did not ask for Draupadi to be returned to life. Why is this? Nakula is the child of Madri, and I am the son of Kunti. In this way, if only two of us are to survive, one person from each side of the family will go on. That is why I asked for Nakula to be brought back to life." "Ah, I am well pleased with you," said the voice. "I shall return all of your brothers and your dear wife Draupadi to life. But ask from me one question. Ask one question of me, and I will answer it." And Yudhishthira said, "Tell me, our 13th year is approaching, the last year we must spend in hiding, in secret. Tell me, where should we go? What forms should we take, so that we will not be discovered?" And Dharma said, "You must go to the kingdom of King Virata. There, each of you must become your opposite." And a heron flapped up from the edge of the lake and flew into the sky. And breath returned to all of Yudhishthira's brothers, and to Draupadi as well. They blinked, they breathed, they opened their eyes. They looked at Yudhishthira. "What has happened?" they said. "You slept," he said, "and now you are awake." They all drank from the water of that pool, and it was clear and sweet. And then Yudhishthira said, "We must go to the kingdom of King Virata. There we will spend our 13th year, in disguise, undiscovered. Let us go." So they walked through the grasses, a long time, and after many days they came to a country of many hills. They arrived there late in the day, when the sun was about to go down. And they found a large tree that was hollow on the inside. And in this tree Arjuna put his bow and his arrows. They all put their spears and their swords inside, nestled in the dark heart of this tree. And then, as the sun went down, they walked to the edge of this hill. It went plunging down into a stream. The stream was the border of King Wirata's kingdom. And on the other side of that stream, there was a village. In the dusky light of sundown, they looked in that village, and they heard music wafting to them on the breeze. There were colored lights strung between the houses. It seemed like a festival, a carnival was going on of some kind. The music drifted up to them, many colors in that music. They looked, they saw people dancing down there in the city. A carnival, said Arjuna. Yes, said Yudhishthira. It is a festival time in this kingdom. We will spend the night here, and tomorrow we will go down into the kingdom and see how we can be of service. So they all lay down in that forest, and they slept. And at night the music played, and it threaded itself into their dreams and changed what they dreamed about. Arjuna awoke in a half-sleep in the morning with some interesting thoughts in his head. He was thinking about swords. What if you didn't use a sword to kill anyone, he thought. What else could it do? What's it good for? It's awful big to be a melon slicer, but it could be used for that. You don't want to cut a strawberry with a sword. It's way too big. A blueberry? Ridiculous. But it would hack a melon in two pretty well. It's still pretty big for a melon slicer, though. And he thought about his bow and his arrows. What would you do with them? If you didn't kill anybody, what would you do? Well, he thought, the bow's kind of like an instrument, a musical instrument. You could twang that one string and you could make some sounds. You could sing a little song. And the arrows, what about them? Well, they have brightly colored feathers, he thought to himself. Beautiful feathers. Those are very nice, aren't they? Yes, lovely, lovely feathers. If I had a house, I think I would take those arrows, I would stick them in the ground with the feathers sticking up, and they would mark the path through my garden to my house. That would be just lovely, he thought, just lovely. And he smiled to himself in his half-sleep, and a tremble of delight went through him at this thought of arrows sticking in the ground, marking a garden path. And then the sun was up, and it was day. Yudhishthira was there, looking down at him. Arjuna, he said, Are you okay? Yes, he said. I'm fine. Hello. Welcome. Thank you for attending to this story. Thank you for giving your attention to it. It's a carnival of images. It's a coal mine of the soul. It's a palace full of mirrors. And in some of them we look and we see our own faces. Where do you want to be? Where do we want to be? On the mountaintop with Arjuna, waking up before dawn. Well, waking up at dawn as the sun rises. Or Draupadi, seizing hold of that purple, sweet fruit. Karna ripping his golden breastplate off. Ouch! Arjuna having strange dreams in the morning about his weapons, if they weren't weapons. Each of these places in the story is a way into it, and it's a way into yourself, which is the limitless territory, right? Into which we must journey, all of us, in this life. I'm drawn to the story of Draupadi and the purple fruit, the Jambul tree, Jambul. Everyone is challenged in the wilderness, and she is challenged as well. And she admits this secret that she has loved Karna in her heart. Not so surprising, perhaps. And by admitting this secret, by confessing this feeling she has had, or perhaps still has, magic can happen. The fruit is returned to its branch, and the holy man gets to eat. Also, that lovely moment, interesting moment, when none of her husbands can help her. They've got powers in magic. They can destroy stuff, but can they put a fruit back on its branch? No, they cannot. So it's a sweet, sad part of the story. And unlike other parts of this story, I only have one source for it, and that is a book called Jaya, Jaya, by Devdutt Patanaik, Pattanaik. This came out a few years ago. It's a terrific retelling of the whole Mahabharata, with many folk versions, to use that phrase, with many alternate versions and stories in it as well. And one of them is this story. He says of it, quote, "The story of the jambu fruit comes from a folk play from Maharashtra called Jambul Akhyan. It is said that the jambu fruit stains the tongue purple to remind us of all the secrets that we keep from the world." He also notes that Draupadi is identified with the goddess often in versions of the Mahabharata. So fascinating, interesting. It's good as a storyteller these days to have several versions to draw from. That's, gives you some room. But I just love this story so much, and it's great to have a little backstory for Draupadi as well. Because, of course, something's going on in there. And so we get to hear a little bit about that. And the detail of the purple fruit is so perfect. Desire, lust, eros, it comes to us. And it is a river we jump into, perhaps. Is it a bird flying through the sky of our consciousness and then it flies away? Well, in this story, in this part of the story, it is envisioned as a fruit. A purple, sweet, beautiful fruit. So we can ask ourselves, when were we stained? When did we have to reveal a truth and so heal the world and help the world? That is the question. It's wonderful also to be telling a story that is so alive as this, that is a living story. Now, for me, in upstate New York, it's not living in the sense that I see its landmarks around me. It's not living in the sense that there are 100 people in this town who are telling this story or who know the story, although there probably are 100, I should say. But this is a story very alive. The Odyssey is alive too, and the Iliad certainly, but this one is very much so. And I haven't been to India, but when I research these things over and over again, there's like temples and hills and mountains connected with parts of this story. And this story is still being told over there and in other places as well. So there are many versions of these stories as they get told and retold. I've said this in another podcast, but in the 20th century, some Indian scholars spent about 50 years collating all the versions of the Mahabharata and coming up with the most common variants of the stories and making sort of an authoritative version. And that's the one you see mostly written down in books. But there's many other versions, and it's just very cool to know those are out there. And this is one of them. Also, perhaps I should say, just as a storyteller, there's a problem with momentum for me in this part of the story. Some stories, they're like dominoes falling down. One event happens and it causes another event to happen. Most fairy tales are like that, for sure. Gilgamesh is quite long, but it is also like that. The Odyssey's mostly like that, except in the middle with all those islands. You get the sense they could drift, they could sail anywhere and have a new adventure. And that's the way it is with epics such as the Odyssey, the Iliad, and the Mahabharata. Not to mention the many other epics in the world, of course. That's not the end of the story. But they're so big, people just stuff one story after the other into them, which is amazing. It's like a big warehouse, a big bag full of things. But as a storyteller, you get to a place like this in the wilderness where there's so many different stories you could choose from. There's a lack of forward motion, perhaps. There can be. So just as a storyteller, I'm sharing that with you because it says something about the nature of this story. It is so large. It's a cosmology, really. To tell it straight through like I'm doing, no one would really do this. People don't do this with epics, generally. You sit down and you tell part of the story. For example, the Odyssey, you'd tell the Cyclops version of part of the story or the King Aeolus part of the story. You wouldn't necessarily just kind of truck through the whole thing. So to do that is a very linear thing, of course, and it limits a story in a way. You're taking one path through the wilderness of the story. But as Americans and Europeans, as modern folks who are not of the Indian culture, do not know the story, it seemed to me that it is necessary to just go through it and get the main details. It's necessary for me anyway, just so I can hear the whole thing together. So that's what I'm doing here. But in this forest wilderness section, I've tried to pick the moments that really speak to me, and these are the ones. So we've got the Jambul tree. And we've got Arjuna awakening on the mountain. Lovely. And what else? Well, there's Karna ripping off his golden breastplate. Ouch. Ouch. And there is Yudhishthira being tested by his father, Dharma. And Yudhishthira comes out on top in that episode, we could say. Like he's not defeated by his father in the same way that Arjuna is beaten by Shiva, we might say. Or Draupadi is humbled by her experience at the tree. Or Bhima is humbled by his experience of trying to lift Hanuman's tail. You know, they all reach the limit of their powers. Yudhishthira doesn't do that in that episode, but we could say he already reached the limit when he lost the whole kingdom in the dice game, perhaps. So he's had some learning to do already, I like to think. So one question would be, what moves you about this story? What elements grab you? Karna keeping his vow is quite amazing, I feel. And that conversation with his father, the sun god, in a dream, where Karna says, you know, what I am will survive, though my body will be destroyed. By keeping this vow, what I am will be protected, even though my body will be lost, will be killed. Beautiful, touching moment. And similar in some ways, it reminds me again of things I've heard in the Iliad, the Odyssey, or in Norse myth, where this heroic code, right, where the warrior, like, we're going to fight, and if we die, at least we go down fighting. So it's similar to that, but just in a different way, and in a more attractive way for me, because he's not killing anything, at this point anyway. He's just maintaining this vow of generosity of all things. He's not like, I'm going to fight until I am killed, although there's plenty of that in this story. But in this moment, it's just this vow of generosity. I'm going to be generous. You know, darn it, no matter what happens. You know, it's an iron vow I've made. So it's lovely to see a warrior, a fellow in this story who will become known and is already known for his feats of strength and killing things and things with the sword and the bow and the arrow. Here he's being generous, and he's so committed to that. He's willing to die for that. He's willing to die for that value of being generous, which I love. And again, not to bash the Iliad, but I don't see a lot of that in that story as much. So it's a sweet moment, and tragic and painful when he takes off that breastplate, which, if you remember, he was born with when Kunti received a mantra from a holy man to have a child by a god. She sort of whimsically called upon the sun god, gave birth to Karna just there and then, and was ashamed, and so put him in a boat, a reed basket, actually, and he floated away on the river with his golden breastplate on. Now, in the Sanskrit original, if I can use that phrase, in the Sanskrit version, he also has two golden earrings. I chose not to add them just because, I don't know, felt more complicated and a little more culturally distant for us to have earrings on this fellow. But I don't know, maybe next week I'll put it back. Who knows? So I think part of what I get from that, from his vow of generosity and his determination to maintain that, is this awareness in him of a larger world than what's going on right now. If this material life is all there is, we just got to stay alive, have fun, and then we die and it's over. But he is seeing his life as part of a larger picture, a larger cosmos. He doesn't use the word soul, but that seems to me what he's talking about. What I am will endure, which is this being who took a vow of generosity and kept it, despite being tempted by a god like Indra. So that feels good to me, that our lives here, don't just end. There's a larger picture, and our actions here matter. They matter, and our attitudes and our decisions about to be generous or to be not have consequences. Yudhishthira, of course, will show a similar fortitude in his vows. He vowed to go to the wilderness for 13 years, and he's going to keep it. He will be, well, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. He will be disturbed by events later in the story because he wants to protect truth and dharma and the harmony of all things. So that seems an awareness woven throughout this story, that our actions matter on a larger scale than just in this life. In a cosmic, big picture way, our actions affect larger things. And also in this part of the story, we had Arjuna and his little story of being cursed by the goddess Urvasi to lose his strength for an entire year and become a woman. And I guess we could choose to be annoyed by that, like, why is being a woman a curse, but I don't know. I don't see it quite that way. Of course, I invite you to see it however you want, but to me, it's just beautiful that he has to become basically his opposite, The Irish, there's an Irish saying, don't give a man a sword until you've taught him how to dance. Now, Arjuna has already had a sword and a bow and an arrow and done all kinds of stuff, but nevertheless, before this big battle comes, he's got to spend a year as a woman. And we see that already at the end, he's starting to change a little bit and have sort of different thoughts and see the world from a different point of view. And of course, Yudhishthira, when he was at the pool, there was the question, what is your opposite? Myself. And they will go to the kingdom of Virata, King Virata, and they will become their opposites. And I've spoken about this before, but that seems like a valuable experience for any of us. I've mentioned before how I was a worker for Greenpeace once, the environmental activist organization, and then once I was a temp in a skyscraper in Manhattan. And there was a kind of an evil, if I can use that word, an evil law firm defending corporate clients. Oh, man. And so it's good for us to have those different changes in perspective. In the Odyssey, Tiresias, the blind seer, is wise. He has exceptional wisdom, partly because he's been a man and a woman in his life. He was a man, and then all kinds of magical things happened, and he lived as a woman, and he returned to being a man. So that breadth of experience leads to wisdom. And here in the Mahabharata, we see a similar idea that in order to transcend who they are now, in order to become more than what they are, they must embrace their opposites. And we will see that more fully in the next part of this story. But I guess the question for us is, when have we done that? When have we been, to be schooled in anything, to take on a new, to learn something new, is to become innocent and foolish once again. So if you're an adult, that's one way to lose some of your adultness and become innocent again. Like, oh, I'm going to learn how to whatever, ski or play the sousaphone, or I'm going to learn how to knit. It's some new experience. So that's one idea that comes to my mind. But this experience of being what we are not, in Jungian terms, developing the skills, the weaker side of our personalities. That's where the growth is. And so that's what they're doing here in the wilderness. And there's almost like a law in the universe, that a natural law which requires that of us, not always in a pleasant way. This is looking at it a little more broadly, but celebrities, movie stars, right? Or whatever, musicians, they're super famous, they're amazing, they're good looking, they do amazing things, and then comes the dark side, comes the whatever, substance abuse, or loss of money, or 10 marriages in a row, something horrible like that. So without judging it, it doesn't sound pleasant, but without judging that, it's more like there's another territory of life which you must explore, and you can only do that now by losing your position, moving away from this posture of mastery and power and competence, which you have worked so hard to attain, and becoming clueless once again, which in this story is going to be through becoming the opposite, so to speak, becoming what you are not, and learning from that experience. When I first bought a car, it was $300. I bought a 78 Toyota Corolla. I bought that in like 96, my first car. And I remember thinking, it was kind of a dream I had. I was like half awake, kind of like Arjuna. And I had the thought that, if I can master this car, if I can learn how to fix it and like replace the alternator and do this and do that, I'll be just a superhero. That's me when I'm like in my 20s thinking that. Because I had developed the skills of poetry and music and storytelling, we could say, and I hadn't really done anything with learning about cars. And I thought to myself, the feeling was, if I can learn those skills, then I'll be like complete somehow. I will be whole. I will have mastered the car skills and the writing sonnet skills. Now, I only went so far with that car. I did replace the alternator. It was totally rusted out. Got it out of there. That was my big victory. Changed the oil a few times. Put a hole in the radiator by accident one time. Anyway, but that was my feeling at the time, is that if I can master this other realm, then I will grow in a big way. So that's what I get from this story, is and we'll get it even more next part of the story, but the rejuvenating effects of entering a realm that is foreign to you, of becoming clueless and innocent once again, of becoming what you were not and learning from that. And we will explore that next time around. Thank you for listening to this, and please join me again. I don't know how many episodes we got. We're about halfway through of this big, wonderful story, and we're going to keep on going. If you are able to support this podcast, please do so, and thank you for the folks who have done so already. It helps pay for stuff like hosting of websites and things like that. It helps make this possible. You can do that through my website. You can do it actually through Patreon, www.patreon.com/storyjl. Patreon, Patreon. That's been a tremendous help to me, especially through the pandemic. If you're looking for more stories, there are plenty on my website, jayleeming.com, JAYLEEMING.com. Thank you so much for listening to this, and take care.